evening, everyone. Happy 2021. I am so excited to be with you tonight on January 4th, 2021. And I've been saying this over and over again. 2021, it's time to have some fun. So we are definitely going to start the year off right with part 2 from last year with our wonderful guest, Mike Spatola. So welcome, Mike. Welcome to this wonderful show on manifesting. And I'm so excited to have you. You're definitely someone who have often enjoyed manifesting magic with. So welcome to the show tonight. Thank you so much for saying yes, as you always do to me. I don't want to push the envelope too far, but I am so grateful that you did. I do want to say this is Manifesting with Meg. 2021 Conversations with Extraordinary People. This is a show about life transformation, living your dreams, spiritual inspiration, finding true happiness, and my favorite, discovering bliss. And this is January. Carpe diem, seize the day. And like I said, welcome Mike Spatola to join me tonight. Thank you. And how are you doing?
Meg, I couldn't be any better. We successfully weathered an unrelenting 2020.
Yes.
So happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting and a pleasure to be visiting with you again and your audience.
Thank you. And over the last year, I've enjoyed many of your inspirational quotes, sections, insights. So I can't wait to bring that into the fore and share that with my audience tonight. Remember, everyone, this show is about bliss, and it's not just an abstract idea. It's an attainable state of being. Wherever you are, whoever you are, wherever you find yourself, you're just steps away from living the life you desire. Are you ready to wake up and open up to the universe filled with possibility? So, Mike, let's remember before we begin, since the book Magical Guide to Bliss is what guides my way, I ask you to set your intention tonight. I do want to share my intention with everyone of gratitude, overwhelming gratitude and an abundance of life and love for everyone coming alive to our dreams is really, truly what I want to start off with this year so we can catapult into something amazing despite the ups and downs. We all will push on together, and I love the collaboration. So as well, I ask you to set your intention and pick a number between 3 and 397 in the book, and we'll get to that at the end of the show. So without further ado,
my laces are tight and I'm ready to go.
I love that your laces are tight. Of course they are. I mean, you would not be the amazing coach that you are if your laces were anything but tight. So I will say this, Mike is a lifelong teacher, a coach and advisor to many people, even outside the classroom. He takes his gifts and, many years, 40 plus years in the actual school setting at many notable preparatory schools, leaving a wake of very inspired students, as well as his colleagues and teachers, influencing them to rise above, go higher than they could possibly imagine. I was a beneficiary of being in one of his classrooms. I always wonder back in the day if he ever possibly thought or could imagine that, if I got focused enough, right? But I am so beyond grateful for your impact on my life and that I get to share you and your incredible zest for life with everyone else tonight. So I would go on and on, but I do want you to introduce yourself and give us your take. It's been an interesting year, needless to say. And I know that for all of us, we want to hear where you're coming from and how you're doing.
Doing great. How many years now retired? I miss the classroom. I miss the personal contact with the students, the athletes, my colleagues. Try to still get up fairly early in the morning and get myself ready for the day, but don't want to create bad habits. Certainly, like for many, maybe less so for me because I am retired. So it's made it a little bit easier on me and on my immediate family. But this has been obviously a very, very trying and tough year. It's really tested our intestinal fortitude. A lot of our character traits have been put on notice, on guard, and so I'm doing fine. I've stayed healthy. I try to be as careful as the next person, maybe more so. Pam's doing great. Family's doing well, thank God. So all is well with us and with me specifically. But I know that it's been a very, very difficult, challenging year for so many families, and my heart aches for those that have lost loved ones. Certainly, I feel a real appreciation and kinship for all of my former colleagues at all of my schools who are really pounding the pavement to make this work for our future generations. So we're good. I mean, I'm sitting right now, but I'm still standing, and the Lord has blessed me with a great family, great friends, and I'm with you. What could be better?
I do want to say something, because I did tell you when I was going to have you on the show when we initially spoke that this year we're dedicating the show to this beautiful, beautiful woman. And I would love for you to introduce us all to your beautiful mother, Patricia married Duggan, married Spatola, and then also after your dad tragically died in an auto accident when you were just 9 months old, which I didn't know that. My God, she remarried when you were 15, and then she became a Herbert. So I did want to start the show with this beautiful woman, because you know how important mothers are to me. So I wanted to, right out of the box, honor her, because these are those people who start us out on our path, on our journey, perhaps on our journey to bliss, perhaps, to help us gain the fortitude to overcome obstacles. Tell me a little bit about this beautiful woman.
Well, I appreciate that. As a matter of fact, that was one of the difficult situations that we confronted or had to confront during this year period of time. My mom passed away October 14th of this year. And we made a quick trek to Orlando, Florida for the wake and the funeral. And then a quick exit out because of the pandemic and going from one state to another. But in any event, so in a way, this is cathartic for me that you would allow me the opportunity to speak about her. There are a few things I'd love to share with you and the audience about her, because so much of what she was is probably reflected in me, and that's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I've grown to appreciate that more and more the older that I have gotten. But there are a few things I'd like to share. So permit me to share some of her background. When she was 19 or 20 years of age, she was engaged to a young man who was in the United States Army. The young man was deployed to Korea, where he subsequently, on behalf of the United States and the United Nations forces in the Korean War, lost his life. Okay. So here's this 19, 20-year-old young lady, girl, who has lost her fiance. And so what happened was she became very reclusive. Thankfully, she had three siblings, 2 older sisters and an older brother, and a mom who deeply cared about her and her well-being. But she became reclusive, and really insulated herself from. It was a tragedy, and at that young age, I can't even begin to imagine. So in any event, so that occurred, and fortunately, she had a great network of neighborhood friends, and your mom and dad can appreciate, I guess, most city areas, urban areas, particularly back in the 30s, maybe 20s, 30s, 40s, there was a real connection within the neighborhood among families and among the youngsters there. Mainly grew up together, and they were very cliquish. So with a great network of friends, they enticed her to get out after I want to say what I had heard was anywhere from 3 to 4 or 5 months, she just would not do anything.
Wow.
She was so depressed and disillusioned. And so anyway, so they enticed her to come out, and whatever it is they did back in that period of time or in that Queens neighborhood, she met through my uncle, Jimmy Spatola. She met John Spatola, my father. And so they quickly got engaged, married. I don't think she was on the rebound because she clearly had a little bit of space, and they gave her more in the loss of her first fiance. My dad was in the Air Force.
Okay.
There are stories behind that, but because he was truant all the time, and really he had no interest in going to school or Catholic education on Saturdays and Sundays. So he joined the Air Force, probably, which would save his life. Well, I was born, and 9.5 to 10 months in, we were in an automobile accident. A drunk driver ran a stop sign, crashed into our car. Subsequently, my dad was, of course, back in that period of time, Meg, no seatbelts, no infant car seats. So my dad was thrown from the car and sustained serious head injuries. I want to say that was on January 8th of 1955. And he passed January 12th, so several days.
Wow.
He lay in the hospital. I was also thrown from the car. And by the grace of God, I landed on my father.
Oh, wow.
Which saved my life. I landed on, he was a fairly big man, and so not to make light of a tragedy, but was wide enough and big and cushiony enough that when I landed, I was able to sort of just roll off.
Wow.
With no injuries. My mom survived the crash, but my mom at that point was pregnant with what turned out to be, now the baby died in the accident. So the baby was born, a girl. They actually had a name planned for her. Her name was Elaine. Here's the point. In a very, very young life, she has confronted 2 losses, tragic losses.
Wow.
Men she adored and loved. And now at a very, very young age, she's stuck with little old Michael, John, and needing to play what she felt at the time was, so she's what, 23, 24, or approaching that age, the role of a mom and a dad.
Wow.
And so in any event, these tragedies, I think, steeled her, gave her an inner fortitude and strength. And in terms of the role that she had to play by herself, because in our 15 years together as a team of 2, she oftentimes had 2 to 3 jobs that she worked. I was a latchkey child long before the notion of latchkey came known or was popularized. But I had an uncle, my Uncle Harold Preston, her oldest sister's husband, a brother-in-law, who said to her at one point, "Patty, be his mom. Don't try to be his mom and his dad. You can't be both. Don't try to be both. Just be his mom," which she was. The role that she played in my life as a single parent and as a latchkey kid was enormous. She instilled discipline. And I don't mean discipline from a corporal punishment standpoint, although she could be swift with that if necessary. That certainly was more acceptable back in the day. But she instilled a tremendous amount of discipline, self-discipline, and making me accountable and responsible, particularly in the role of a latchkey kid.
Wow.
She trusted me at a very young age to do the things but in the meantime, she has to impart those principles of right and wrong, to be careful, to be guarded, not to readily trust, even back in that period of time when neighbors looked after their neighbors' sons and daughters. She loved sports, loved politics.
That's where you get it from.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Two quick funny stories about it. In the 1960 election, growing up in Queens in a more urban area, and your parents would be familiar with this, stickball was a very popular sport.
Oh, my dad played it all the time. Yeah.
And we used to use the manhole covers as sort of home base, and then we'd make the other bases up the street. But anyway, so it's the 1960 election, and I'm a product of parochial education. She was a devout Catholic. I'd say very traditional, probably conservative Catholic growing up, and even as a young parent. And I had the nuns, and so in school, all the nuns were for Jack Kennedy, and I just made an assumption, a gross assumption, that Mom would naturally, as a Roman Catholic and very much involved in politics, she would work the polls every now and again. She would just simply vote for Jack Kennedy. Well, we're out playing stickball, and around the corner is the car, and she's driving the car, and she turns the corner, comes up the street, and I slow her down. I happen to be batting, so I'm at the manhole cover a few houses down from my grandparents' house, and I stopped her and I said, "So you voted for Jack Kennedy?" And she just nodded.
Oh.
Well, I come to realize, I'm a young adult, I think, when I found out she voted for Richard Nixon.
Nixon. Oh.
And I swore that I would never forgive her, which ultimately we reconciled. But and then the other was a situation where back in 1964, the Beatles first appeared here in the United States and appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And of course, they came back in that period of time. The hair was long and radical, and they smoked. And John Lennon said some things about Jesus Christ, and I'm sure the Long Island Catholic was just denouncing the Beatles. So I had a birthday coming, and my mom always made a point to ask me what I would like for my birthday. And I think her greatest fear was that for my birthday, I would take the wrong path and ask for a Beatles wig.
Oh.
So push came to shove, and she said to me one day, "All right, now I really would like you to get the gift that you would like to have for your birthday. So what is it that I know I can see her face right now in the kitchen asking me this question." And I said, I would like the 1964-65 Topps baseball card series.
Oh, okay.
And I could see this.
Oh, she was elated.
The Beatles were not. I love the Beatles music, but I was not asking for a wig. So she was that kind of person too, who was very caring, sensitive, and but always wanted to, in her own way, steer me in the right direction. And I've often said that for her, sports, while she loved them and grew up in a family that loved sports, boxing, baseball, and football in particular, she always felt that I needed to be involved in sports, to be around other males, older men, to sort of fill the void. Because my grandfather, her dad, was older. And my uncles lived in various parts of New York, so we weren't. And as teachers, we had nuns, and so there wasn't a real male presence. So but those are two very funny stories about her.
I want to interject really quickly because I think it's really important, because as you speak of her and you honor her, there's something to be said about leaving a legacy, her legacy, what she left for you. And I know that is a kind of part two of our conversation, in addition to the theme for today, is if you don't have time, if you don't make time for your dreams, then who will? So as far as the legacy portion of it goes, it sounds to me like even facing incredible challenges and loss, my God, at such a young age, she was able to persevere in the way she could do that. Because I mean, we all have experienced loss at perhaps in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, but at our 20s, and at the time, a baby not only, and then our two spouses, two significant others. What a fortitude she must have had to shift and persevere in the direction of like a never give up. So as we go back to the whole the context around the legacy that most impacted you on your life's journey, what can you say is the thing that your mother truly left to you and also to your family?
There are several things she possessed and influenced me, and certainly my two younger siblings now, because that's sort of the next phase in her life that she richly deserved and was rewarded, was to be able to get remarried and then provide me with two incredibly loving and wonderful sisters. Here's one of the key things that I would say, and I don't necessarily know how to use one word to define or describe this, but there was never a time, particularly when I was young, pre-teen years, there was never a time when I never felt cheated or shortchanged in my upbringing. We were not a nuclear family because we were missing a dad, and certainly on various occasions there were things that I probably did without that other kids were not, they had or possessed, but never, there wasn't a day that I felt shortchanged or that I was doing without or had to sacrifice. She never made me feel anything other than rich.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Never. And so, it's that. Of course, at the time, I had no idea what I'm doing with or without, or but she set sort of that tone and tenor of strength, and it's her character that has influenced me and our family. Her integrity, humility. I mean, you didn't, when you were around Pat Spatola or Herbert, you did not, this braggadocio stuff, you just, no. So you want to know how the team did, not how you necessarily did at bat. She didn't want to know necessarily how many points you scored, but how did your team do? Her humility really set her apart. She had an incredible sense of humor, and not that she was a joke teller, because she was not that, but it was her ability to not take herself too seriously. She possessed this confident, self-deprecating spirit that immediately would win you over. And as she grew older, that sense of humor came through that much more, where she could just sort of lighten the room with laughing at herself, and she would make herself the butt of the joke if need be, to make everybody else feel welcome and warm. And then I'd say another thing that she taught, which would be part of her legacy, is her adaptability. My goodness.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
She changed over time. She evolved to where she lightened up. The noose was not as tight as it used to be. I tease my sisters, I know Mom when, you have no idea. Certainly John Herbert, my stepdad, had her tone it down, because he was, they were different in a lot of ways. Common values, common principles, but very, very different. Whereas she could be a little hard-headed and stubborn and obstinate even at times. But is
that passed on through the generation? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. They always say the apple doesn't fall that far.
Yeah, but here's the other thing that I've often thought about, Meg, is, and I'm not not smart enough to talk about genetics and whatnot. But it does possibly go to environment and the atmosphere or the environment in which you grow. In order, like there were times through the years when I would resent my mom, probably later in life, in my latter years as a teen and then into my 20s and as I grew older, because I found myself relying oftentimes on my dad's sister, younger sister, and older brother for information about him,
Okay.
and even cousins, and so I would grow. I can't say angry necessarily, because I would not get angry at my mom, but disappointed that she didn't share a lot more about what traits, what characteristic mannerisms I may have had that genetically were passed by my dad.
Yeah.
And so possibly, because I think most would say, who knew my mom, would say, you very much like your mom. And so it raises that question, how much is passed through the genes, or how much is your development based on those you are around and who are teaching you their values, principles, and their likes and dislikes, and so on and so forth. So it's not that she kept me in the dark, but she was guarded and protecting me from living a childhood with regret. She did not want me to feel regret. She had enough regret for both of us, and just did not want that to in fact happen.
So on this point, I want to segue, because I think it's this kind of purpose of, you're saying adaptability, evolved, changed over time, and literally when we were on last year at the end of the show, you left us on January 6, 2020 with this final inspiration. I encourage you to seize the day, not only seize it, but seize it with gusto. Now, who knew that we were not only going to seize the day, but a whole other situation that nobody truly understood, that shut down our country, that caused a lot of people to go into fear, a lot of people being upended with their livelihood. People got sick. So much happened. And yet at the core, we have this new notion against this contrast in 2020 of how precious life is. And I think that, with your beautiful mother's picture on here, we can look to this quote that you've indicated as well. And the reality is that we walk slowly, breathe deeply, and cherish the moments now. And I think that is something that, plays into the quote. Most people are so busy knocking themselves out, trying to do everything they think they should. They never get around to doing what they want to do. And that's Kathleen Winsor, the American author. And that's the quote for today. So, the lessons learned. I'm curious, what are some of the big lessons that you've learned from that great pause, that we all just came out of, and we're trying to figure out what the moving forward looks like?
Well, you're so right. In a way, retirement has, while there are sides of it that I'm not comfortable with, because I want to be active and involved, but what it's enabled me to do is really reflect on some of these things, such as walk slowly, think deeply, and really cherish moments that for 41 years I'm probably guilty of I don't want to say consciously ignoring, but neglecting. For example, I would oftentimes wonder if I was paying enough attention to my own 4 children as I was to everybody else's children.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was able to teach them and coach them as well. And we did a lot of things together during school. Either I taught or coached them, or they were going to the same school. But in any event, you know, a lot of things are being tested here. Our patience, our tolerance, gratitude, our ability to adapt, empathy, maintaining a religious and spiritual faith, trusting each other.
I think that's
and our institutions. It's a very trying time that I have no doubt will survive. It's going to require probably us to adapt to a new normal, whatever that might in fact be. I think we're at a point in history. I'm not necessarily Hegelian or Marxist in terms of the dialectic in the classes, but maybe there's some truth to that. Yeah. But in any event, I just think that in our own way, in our own individual familiar worlds, and then collectively as a state or as a nation, we're being tested and challenged here. And it's how we sort of come out of this that so I have more time to think about those types of things. I worry about getting headaches thinking too much about them, but you know, I have the ability to sort of talk about pause and to think a little bit more deliberatively about what's going on. That can be problematic, but it's also wonderful opportunities to just think about those things that for 41 years plus you don't have really opportunities to think too much about. But in any event, I think we are strong enough, and I think supportive of one another, that we come out of sort of this pandemic blip, and we'll be stronger as a result of it. I just really believe that. There are periods in history where people have had to grapple with these challenges.
Yeah.
First, we're not going to be the last. I'm hoping that it's the last in my lifetime.
I have to tell you, Mike, my dad was saying over and over again, now that he's in his late 70s now, he's like, why now? Why now?
Yeah.
Why? And I get this, and I definitely, I'm going to bring your mother back on afterwards, but I wanted to say that it brings to mind this quote from one of your faves. I know John Wooden and Berta Medina is on here saying that adaptability, flexibility, and perspective adjustments among so many lessons over the year. But I think ultimately your dreams become more forefront, because you can't put off that for tomorrow, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And as you've come to know me, I am a huge dreamer, visual. I think that it's that sustenance that gives you life, having that beautiful enthusiasm toward the future, so that you can hold on to something and bring something beautiful into this world. And I watch, I've had the wonderful pleasure to be taught by you still, even in the world of social media, and at the same time engage in the conversation, which I think is beautiful as a teacher, to have that opportunity to do for others, and they join in, and you're very much an open classroom to opinions and ideas, and that truly makes not even a good teacher, it makes a good person, because the curiosity and the openness combined. But tell me a little bit about your fascination for John Wooden, and and why this particular quote speaks to you, because I think this is really something that people can anchor themselves on this year as we start 2021. I think that dreaming again, even as we come out of this pandemic. What does that sound like to you?
Well, I love the quote. I had a wonderful opportunity, actually, when I was teaching and coaching at Trinity Prep in Winter Park, to attend a basketball clinic that was held. Oh, I can't remember where exactly it was held, but it was fairly close to the Orlando International Airport. And the keynote speaker, actually, probably not the keynote speaker, because that would be the first speaker, right, or one of the first. John Wooden was, at that point in time, a highly, highly successful and respectable coach at UCLA. And so he was the key speaker at the clinic. The clinic would run Friday evening, all day Saturday, and then on Sunday, to keep everybody present, you'd have a person, a coach, a personality, a guy like John Wooden come on the scene for the last day. Well, it turns out that he was just extraordinary. He's as great a basketball coach as he was, God rest his soul. He was just a walking and talking Confucius and life. And, you know, he had his detractors. A lot of people felt that he was a phony and putting on airs, but I don't know how you put on airs like that for so many years. And anyway, long story short, I happened to be at this clinic, and in Orlando. It was close to the airport. And it turns out, and I don't know how this happened, but it turns out that John Wooden needed a ride to the Orlando International Airport.
I love this.
So I was at the clinic with a good friend who still lives in Orlando, Florida. And so his name is Mike Fred. So Mike Fred says, hey, let's take him.
Yeah.
So Meg, I'm telling you, it was sort of like one of these life-changing moments. Like I care deeply about John Wooden. I'm not too sure that Mike Fred necessarily cared all that much about John Wooden, but I did. So John Wooden's, I'm in the back seat, Mike's driving, and John Wooden is sitting on the passenger side in the front seat. And I wanted time to stop. I wanted it on
those moments.
Centermont Boulevard, as we're approaching the airport. 436. It's 436. Yeah. I wanted every stoplight to turn red.
Oh yeah.
Walking with this incredible human being, because by then he was so well known. He's the keynote speaker at the celebrity at the clinic. He's the draw of the clinic. He had won all.
And he's in your car. He's in
our car. So we get to the airport. He's obviously flying back to UCLA, California. And so I said to him, Coach, what time is your flight? And I think the clinic must have ended probably, I'll say 12 noon. And so he says, so we get to the airport. It's probably around 1 o'clock. So I said, Coach, what time is your flight? And he said, my flight isn't until around 4:35. So I said, Now my mind is like going a mile. Like, oh my gosh. I said, Coach, without even consulting with Mike Fred, the driver.
Mike Fred.
I said, Coach, would you mind having some company while you wait for your flight?
I love it.
He said, no, I'd love it. Well, Mike really didn't care. So if Mike is watching this, he's going to go crazy. Yeah. So Mike said, all right, we'll go in. And of course, at that time, you could go in without a ticket. The security was
different world,
completely different world. Great description. And so there, Mike, he liked sports and whatnot, and his brother John actually was my best man in my wedding. And so Mike and I grew up in New York together, and his brother. So we were good friends, and but he wasn't quite as interested in coaching basketball or John Wooden necessarily as I was. And so we're there. I am in the terminal. I think he was flying out TWA. We're in the Orlando International Airport, TWA, and I have an opportunity that you'd die for. You'd kill for.
What did you do with it? What did you do with it? Did you ask him every question in your mind?
I was sitting with, next to, close to, within elbow room. We're touching elbows, for goodness sakes, with Socrates.
Yeah.
With Plato, with Aristotle of the coaching world.
Yes.
And so I have always, and just quickly back to Coach Wooden. So that was a phenomenal opportunity. I think I was about 4 years into teaching, 4 or 5 years. And when I first started teaching, and it was at Trinity Prep, I was never a long-term, like in 10 years, I'm going to be like Jay St. John he's a goal guy. So in 10 years, I'm going to be, in 20 years, this is where I'm going to be. And I wasn't like that. I was more day to day, year to year. But Jay sort of convinced me that, well, you gotta look into your future and say, do you want a life at Trinity forever and ever, or do you want to? So I said, all right, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll make it like every 5 years. I'll reassess and see where I am. And so around year 4, I don't know, for some reason, I just started to second guess my decision to teach, and maybe I should go into private, go to law school. At that point, I have a wife, we have 2 kids, and here I am thinking about making a career move. Hope Pam's not listening. So I wrote this letter.
Oh yeah, she's listening, by the way, just so you know.
So I wrote this letter.
Things with me the whole time. So
I think she's aware of this. I wrote a letter, a very heartfelt letter. Back in the day, it was a snail mail, and I wrote this letter to Coach Wooden. And this, incidentally, the letter predated my spending time with him at the clinic and the Orlando International Airport. Who would have thought, right? So I wrote this.
I totally believe in manifesting the things in your life. So I definitely say that there's a little magic in there. And the fact of the matter is, you wrote to the inner universe that you wanted to have a success. You got delivered. So
it's just unbelievable. So he was a classic letter writer himself.
I love it.
And he wrote a 3 or 4 page letter back to me and encouraged me.
I love it.
Where I was coming from, encouraged me to stay in teaching, that, teachers are not a dime a dozen, and they're needed, and
wow.
Keep striving and set goals. And it was just unbelievable. And we had an opportunity to talk about that at the airport. I've got like this one-on-one.
It's so funny, Mike. I think in the real world, people think that those are just mere coincidences, but I clearly am one of those people that am a true believer that is more synchronistic than you only know. And that's why I was saying, like, I love that you said Jay St. John said that he was goal-oriented, but, I think that, we have, it's funny, dreams, goals are dreams with deadlines. So basically, when we set our goals, we're actually putting our dreams into some concrete form, and we put a deadline to it so they're more likely to come true and come to fruition sooner than later. So it's like the mere fact of the matter is that you had a conversation about a letter that you wrote to one of your idols, your Socrates, your Plato. I mean, my God. And he had the opportunity to sit down, and at that point in time, you said that you were still in school, you were still teaching, that was your passion. And 40 years later, that's still what you did. I mean, I see, let's go back to the mere fact that you are a coach. You are a coach, and you, from all these years of teaching and coaching, you are this quote. And I read it and I'm like, I have to put it in there. A good coach will make his players see what they could become rather than what they are. And clearly, that kind of role in someone else's life can be the view into the possibilities that someone may never have thought existed until you shone a light on it. So, when we're talking about dreamers, if you don't make time for your dreams, who will? Well, then we also have to take into consideration the teachers who see, those people, and that being John Wooden for you.
Yes.
He was your teacher. He
Yes.
was your teacher, and in that role, he allowed you that space to have a one-man audience with Mike Fred, of course, he was there.
He was the driver.
He would have a car, so we know that you'd be stuck at the airport and Pam would have to pick you up. But the bottom line is that these are the things that make a life. These are the things that set a legacy in motion. And I know, I don't want to even speak to any of the relationships you have, but I know there are a plethora of students out there that will mention your name, and how you impacted them. Now, standing where you are now, after a year we've had now, with the beautiful family, knowing that your mother's guidance, from the time you were 9 months, walking you through 15 years as a single parent, disciplining you to the point where, someone else had to come in and loosen the noose so you could breathe a little bit, literally. But this is what's made your life. This is your story. Now we stand on the precipice of another year. Where are you? See, this is a great part because I get to ask you the questions like you did when we were sweating it out in your 20th century.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. I remember, please God, don't pick on me. Don't pick me. Don't pick me. Don't pick me. But yet, the tables, they have turned.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm no closer to writing a book than I was a year ago.
There's actually a book in your mind, if you wouldn't have said that, if you didn't intend that. So I'm going to hold you to that. So the book is coming out. Yes. And,
well, the search is still on. I think I've decided that I would not. I think one of the things we may have talked about a year ago was possibly a political career running for office. While I still love government and to an extent, I love the study of government. I'm not too sure that I am infatuated with politics, particularly the way politics are, the way we engage in politics today. And it would be like spitting against the wind, actually, for one person to think, I'd be like Don Quixote, for crying out loud, shooting at windmills. Unless I could rally a one. So I really put that aside.
Okay, so I have to point this out as you're telling me this, because this is a quote that you gave me. Some men see the world as it is and say, why? I see the world as it could be and say, why not? Why did you share this with me then?
Well, I think I do believe that. And I think that Robert Kennedy is one of my heroes growing up. And actually heroes for many conservatives too, I've met. I believe that, but I don't know whether that's the avenue to go. And so at my ripe old age, I'm still sort of grappling with the direction to go and how to make the world or society or the community a better place. And so I'm still grappling with that, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I see it a certain way and would challenge people, well, why not? Like, when I read from the Magical Guide, which is almost like daily devotionals in a lot of ways, or I'm drawn to inspirational works, whether it be in the coaching field or the political arena, or just philosophy in general, self-help books. it's almost like I'm still trying to find what that path would be. And of course, the pandemic has really sort of put a time out on that for someone in my age bracket, because I've tried to be very, very careful over the last year. That's no excuse, no rationale. But what it's done is it's probably put me on Facebook a little bit more than some would like to see my voice or read my voice. Or in other ways, communicating how I feel. And as you noted earlier, it sometimes, this might have been before we went on air, it's very difficult. You have to tread lightly with what you say, and to whom you say it.
Yeah.
Now, this is a long-winded, incoherent way of saying I'm not exactly sure the direction that I'm going to go in the next stage or step. But I'm sensitive to the point where I don't want to lose valued friendships or relationships over taking strong, closed-minded stands on some things. Now, some are going to be critical of me and say, well, you're truly not standing on your principles or whatnot. But I'd like to find something or do something that would better the family, the community, the society at large, without offending anybody. And that probably sounds weird, because along the way when I was younger, I was never afraid of offending someone. I'm a little bit more sensitive to that now, probably a little bit more thoughtful about what I say and what I do. And so I'm not ducking what I want to do next. I'm still in the process of grappling with what's the best thing to do and how to do it.
So in light of what you're saying, then I want to point this out, because I think this is going to actually kind of guide the conversation, because I know that you're an extraordinary man. I think that literally your life's work, at least part 2, part 3, I don't know what part you're on, because let me tell you, as a coach, you're one part, as a father, you're another part, but this is what makes a life, what makes your story come to life, right? And I think that no one will know your path but you, and how you find it, how it finds you, comes from, all sorts of experiences. Mind you, being on Facebook a little bit more, you are opening yourself to a new audience, and bottom line, becoming introspective in a way that will help and make a difference to other people. And I pulled this James Joyce quote off. Who is in the poster behind you? Who is in the picture frame behind you, behind your head, Celtics?
This frame?
Yes.
That's Ulysses S. Grant.
That's Ulysses S. Grant. Okay. I was always wondered. I was like, who is behind you? Yes.
And that is Dave Cowan's jersey.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
Dave Cowan's is Chris and JP when we were at Trinity. To their left, that is Willie Mays when he played with the New York Giants.
Awesome.
Below that, I'm a shareholder with the Green Bay Packers. And so my daughter and son-in-law sent this picture that says, "Packers welcome Mike Spatola."
That's awesome.
Which I thought when I first got it was actually a welcome from the Green Bay Packers. Of course, it's not. They paid to have that written in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway,
I put it out because I think you're surrounded by your loves, your historical, fervor for information from the greats of history and the greats from sports. And I even humored you by putting on clearly your love of Dunkin' Donuts and your Notre Dame hat. I would definitely say that was me being humorous to you. But the bottom line is that these are the things that bring you passion in life, right? And you've lived aired, fall, triumph, you recreate life out of life. So with all of this beauty of your story and what is to come next, the point of the matter that I'm trying to impress upon this is that you haven't stopped dreaming. And most certainly from your Facebook post, you can tell that your grandchildren see you as a dreamer too. Clearly, the legacy continues of guidance from your mother. And bottom lining it, that comes from the beauty that you said was your mother at the outset. At the heart of character is honesty and integrity. And that's what you said was your, so the heart of your dreams starts there. So I would love to know at this point, what was your intention for tonight?
Well, my intention, as we had briefly shared before we went on air, was that in some way that our conversation would awaken in others an energy, an intrinsic enthusiasm, a passion for something. Life is too short. We confront a lot of these challenges, and for some it's harder than for others. And I've been blessed; it hasn't been hard at all. Mom would never have wanted that to ever be an excuse for her and for me. Mm. She was a model of that. And Robert Frost said, and I quote, "I am not a teacher, but an awakener."
I love this.
So I want our conversation, or wanted our conversation, in terms of being sort of an inspiration for everyone to be an awakener in whatever it is that they do. You don't have to be a teacher. He wasn't a teacher, but what he did, or tried to do, or endeavored to do with his many talents and gifts, was to sort of knock on the door and then have that door opened. And once that door is cracked and you can put a foot through, and you're willing to take some risks, and
I love that.
For me, the inspiration in Frost's statement is that I always saw myself as a teacher. Well, that's what I was, and I was hired to be a teacher. But through the years, over 41 years, I thought, there's got to be more to this, being a teacher. And then the just incredible feedback that I would get from families, parents, your mom, your dad, your sisters, you, and others through the years, I kept thinking, there's got to be more to this. And then I thought about John Wooden, and I thought about my high school coach, Greg Walsh. And they're more than just teachers and coaches. They're awakeners.
Awakeners.
They call your attention to things that maybe you never knew existed, or the potential that you possess. And so I would always want our conversations that are broadcast to be conversations where we're encouraging people, or I'm encouraging someone or groups to be awakeners. Go about their daily lives with a great deal of energy, enthusiasm, and passion.
Yeah.
And by their model, their actions, they inspire people to inspire themselves. They're awakened to all the possibilities that exist out there. That oftentimes we in our day-to-day affairs and our tunnel vision. And see, I have the benefit, and I readily admit this, I have the benefit of being retired. And so I can do a lot more thinking. I can slow the pace down, think a lot more about me, but also about the world around me. And so whatever that avenue then in the future is, where I can call people's attention to the possibilities that exist. like you do, the possibilities, to dream, to never lose your imagination for the possibilities and prospects. So that's my inspirational word. I love Robert Frost anyway, but yeah, I'm not a teacher, but an awakener.
So I do wanna also once again give you a shout out to one of your men here, Vince Lombardi. He says, "I firmly believe that any man's finest hour, his greatest fulfillment of all that he holds dear, is that moment when he has worked his heart out in a good cause and lies exhausted on the field of battle, victorious." So the awakener engages the student to show up and give it your all with a passion. This is how I interpret this quote, even if it's Vince Lombardi, but he's a great inspirational person. And I want to turn and ask you, what number did you pick in the Magical Guide now?
You may have stolen some of my thunder there.
Oh,
but no, it's okay. It's okay.
Synchronistic, so it had to happen. But
yeah, absolutely, we've got that right.
Yes, we definitely do. We definitely do.
Well, class, if you will open up your text, everybody should in fact have a copy of the Magical Guide to Bliss.
I love it.
Like a daily devotional. It is fantastic.
This is quite a surreal moment because literally, yeah, I just had a flashback. I don't know. Like Trinity Prep, 1981 or 82. I don't remember.
I think it was you who said to me last time, you can never stop being a teacher. So
no, never.
All right. So page 273. Live life to the fullest. I chose James Joyce, the great Irish novelist and poet. And to quote James Joyce, which you posted earlier, to live, to err, to fall, to triumph, to recreate life out of life.
Love it.
Now, I want you to know a couple of things, actually. Or maybe it's just one key thing. When I delivered the eulogy for my mom at St. Augustine in, is it Winter Springs? Or the Orlando area. I led off the eulogy with that quote. And the reason that I did is because I thought that it spoke to her life quite nicely. Of course, it's Joyce may have, in his stream of consciousness, Joyce is one of the most frustrating authors. He's one of my favorites.
Frustrating.
The most frustrating authors I have ever read. As a matter of fact, I've started Ulysses, I can't tell you how many times in my life, put it down. Of course, this quote comes from A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. A little bit easier to do, but his stream of consciousness sometimes is problematic for many. So it leaves a quote such as that, I think, a lot of room for interpretation. And when I read it, and it's earmarked, like there's a bookmark there in the Magical Guide for that section and that particular quote by Joyce, because I think it speaks to not only her, but to many of us. We live, we make errors, we fall, but then we tighten the laces, pull up our boots, and we get after it again, and we triumph, and then over time we evolve and we change. And I think about my mom and her adaptability, and then how I've had to change in my life, and who has influenced me to make those positive, constructive changes. And so we're sort of recreating ourselves in a way, and that's not a bad thing. That's a very productive, inspiring, and good thing. And I just love too, if I may, to read the additional part of his quote, which went on to say, because he continues, a wild angel appeared to him, the angel of mortal youth and beauty. and envy from the fair courts of life to throw open before him in an instant of ecstasy the gates of all the ways of error and glory. On and on and on and on. I just love that quote. And Meg, what you've included here in that section, live life to the fullest, quoting Joyce. If I may quickly read some sections, I think this is absolutely wonderful. There are those stories of triumph over tribulation that are known to inspire the masses. There are those events in which the power of the human spirit to rise above challenges is showcased as moving both present and future generations forward. And as we study human existence over time, we discover the secret to keeping hope through it all. Life is truly a gift begging to be appreciated that God gives us every day we open our eyes. Every day we have a chance to fulfill whatever our dreams, our goals, our destiny have to be. He goes, you go on to state there, using Joyce as the backdrop, as long as we do our best in the endeavor of living, even if we fall or err, we will persevere when we set our minds to do it, even triumphing as our own spirit soars in any given moment. If that isn't apropos for now,
oh my God, it's
I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, so we're going to come through this, and we're going to be stronger and better. Our institutions hopefully will be better because of it. We as individuals, society collectively, I just believe that. I absolutely do.
And I also believe that you and I both have, and I put my angel under you and your angel under me. But I think that in many respects, we're guided by the legacy that they left for us. When you just said we move forward, triumphing over tribulation as a community, as a group of people, as a world people. This is not just in our own backyard. This is world, on a world level, from something that really stopped us all to pause and really truly think of how we want to show up in our lives on the daily. Even if we fail, err, we still pick ourselves back up again, pick someone else back up again, which is what you've done over the last year, is maintain that beautiful light that others can follow, and inspired many when those perhaps thought there was nothing to live for and or to be inspired by. And I think that we rely too wholeheartedly on those we hold up as our leaders, rather than looking around to those teachers who are in fact our awakeners. And you and I were very blessed with two very beautiful, strong women to guide our way so that we can turn around and guide others as well, regardless of how we show up or how we label ourselves, because it doesn't matter. It's the person, it's the character, it's the integrity, it's the humility, it's the perseverance, it's the drive, the dreamer in us that, ultimately will be that light for others and for ourselves. So this has been I just got goosebumps when you read the rest of Joyce, because yes, I mean, the youth, right? I mean, we in our youth are so, aspirational, and then we get tarnished by life, but yet at the same time, it comes around to on and on. We go on and on every time we wake up every day. So thank you for that. I was like, oh my, I just kept thinking of Mr. Kinney. Like, you're actually quoting Joyce. I love this. Oh my God. And I had no idea back then the beauty of the words, and I've come to appreciate time. So, wisdom is beautiful. Wisdom over time is beautiful. And that comes from life experience too. So I do want to ask you for one final bit of inspiration. I know that it's been 70 minutes, a wonderful conversation now. And you always elevate me when I talk to you. And there's so much more we could talk about and go on and on and on. But, we have to wrap it up. And at that point, I want to give you the final word. So.
Well, I again, be an awakener. Keep your eyes and ears open. Stay grounded. Don't ever concede on the principles. Do what's right. Be strong. I do feel, as Greek philosophers are credited with saying or believing, character is destiny. And so when all else fails, we literally and figuratively look ourselves in the mirror and we have to answer the question, what did you do at those critical points in time? What did you do to make your life, your community, your family, so on and so forth, better? And so I would encourage everyone to be teachers, but more importantly, be awakeners, and believe in yourself, and believe in us and our institutions. We're being tested in a lot of ways, but it's like that dialectic. And so right now we're in the midst of the clash, and from that clash, hopefully we'll develop something that's uniquely better.
Well, they say because of the Big Bang, we have something really beautiful that unfolded. So, sometimes you need that, the contracting to expand once again. So, I know that you can be found on Facebook. So everybody who wants to engage in this kind of conversation with another awakener, find Mike on Facebook and bring some Joyce along with you and engage the conversation, and certainly sports. He is a huge advocate of the sporting world. And literally, I'm not a huge fan, but I have been following him so I can bring the conversation to the dinner table now. So I'm trying to say I'm still learning from you. So thank you.
And the teacher in me, teachers know they are continuous learners. And so I continuously learn from, I can't tell, countless students, and you happen to be right up there, Meg Nocero. You're right up there with them, continually inspiring, motivating, and teaching. And you're an awakener.
An awakener. I always said that I was a seeker, but now I'm also an awakener.
You are an awakener.
In the seeking, you make some waves and you wake people up. There you go, right?
There you go.
So with that, thank you so much once again. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. Thank you for your time tonight, Mike. This is amazing. You are amazing. I was lucky that you were a teacher in the classroom in Trinity Prep that would start a conversation that lasted many, many years. I want you all to remember that you are deliberate creators of your life. You are, all of you, awakeners. So I'm going to add that to my repertoire. Dream big and never, ever let anyone get in the way of your dreams, because a letter writing campaign could someday have you sitting for hours, captive audience in an airport, and talking for a dream come true, the mentor that you've always imagined. You're John Wooden. And with that, I want you to go out there and you be the triumph over tribulation as you lift up the positive vibration in this world. We all have to come together and do our best to awaken and to reach out to all corners and continue to spread love. Time to manifest our dreams. Blessings and bliss. Happy 2021. We got this. Let's do this. Thank you so much, Mike. And I'll see you next month.
All right. Thank you. Be well. Love your family. Okay.
I will. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.